Hey guys, welcome to the Heart of David. I think that you guys will enjoy this video, although what's in it is not good. I mean, like, it's really not good. Maybe you've never heard it like this before. I'll do my best to explain, and there are people that can go like really in depth about this. I don't have the time to go that deep, but to give you a general idea. I hope you guys are doing well tonight, wherever you are in the world. The deepest question in many people's mind right now, except for people who already knew that there was an issue with Donald Trump and Elon Musk and just all of these characters. How is it that the promises of this man have reversed against the things that, in any case, I think you understand what I mean. There's an avalanche of people feeling betrayed, and I didn't know exactly what was going to happen, but before the election cycle and all that, I knew that he was the Antichrist, and so I knew things couldn't go right. And by the standard of Matthew 24, things cannot get better. You know that. They just don't get better. I spent a fair amount of time, like in the thousands of hours, easily thousands of hours, as I was sick and couch-bound, stuck in front of a TV. I watched a lot of military channels, history channels, when they were actually history channels. Some books. At that time when I was sick, it was very hard to read a book, but I learned a lot in about 10 years about World War II. My grandpa was in the war. He was first wave on Juno Beach as a Canadian engineer, demolition engineer. So, I got interested in that stuff, started to look into all of it. I've got, all types of books and all types of maps and whatever. I also saw into the world of spying. All the spy games, the shadow games. You can see them all the way from World War II all the way through the Cold War, right? There's a lot of different stuff. A lot of shadow wars. And like I said, I'm not going to go into depth. You're going to understand what I'm going to say. Don't turn away from this because I'm not playing a video yet, because you're going to want to hear this. I'm going to play you two different videos. I'm going to play you this one here of someone telling, well, you'll hear. Picture this. You had the United States after the Cold War against the Soviet Empire, the Soviet Empire, which was pretty big, right? No matter what, besides all the ships, besides all the nuclear weapons and all that type of stuff, it was quite apparent that the United States, along with, all other countries like NATO and all that type of stuff, have what you'd say called a trump card above them. It became very clear that the United States and its allies were just too powerful. My rabbit keeps trying to overturn his thing, like his litter box, and it's become hard to concentrate. So despite all the nuclear missiles, despite all those different things, despite all the spies and all that stuff, and how powerful the Russia was, they were not nearly as powerful as the United States. They just weren't. And when you look at all the manpower and all that type of stuff, it just, no. Both Russia and China understand that defeating the U.S. militarily is probably impossible. And you might say, well, look at all their manpower. Look at, I'm telling you, even if they tried to invade the U.S., they'd be faced with over 1 billion guns, I believe, which is one of the reasons why Admiral Yamamoto said, over every hill and under every cliff, every forest, there's going to be someone with guns. And that's why they couldn't. It doesn't matter. The U.S. has a big population, so they thought to themselves, and you're going to see in the video I show you, what can we do? And remember their ideology, okay? Remember, they're masters of propaganda. I think the U.S. is too, but they're masters of propaganda. How are we going to defeat these people? Well, we're going to use their weaknesses against them. We're going to do this within. What we're going to do is we're going to infiltrate slowly. Like Chinese play a long chess game, right? We're going to infiltrate you slowly until the point where you start to take on our ideology. Does that sound familiar? Is that what you're seeing in the States? Is that what you're seeing kind of all over the world? Where the rich are in power everywhere? Isn't that what's happening? Isn't that what Donald Trump is doing? Because I think it is. The churches, think of the churches. You best believe they planned something in the Catholic Church and churches and wherever else they could. And this is the last thing I'll say before I show you something. You best believe that when cell phones came out, but especially YouTube, TikTok, it was game on, right? And you see this in the ideologies, and it's the reason why. It's the reason why we're with all these things. We're in the Tower of Babel. They're all trying to come together. There's just so many moving parts to this. It's just impossible to explain. But you'll see. I'm going to show you something before the video that will interest you. I don't know what year this is, and I don't have time to look this up. You can look this up after. So I don't know if this was like a, I'm not sure what year it was. And anyways, it was their flag. It was a Soviet flag. But they have 5 stars on it. But what do those symbolize? The red pointed, the red 5-pointed star symbolizes the triumph of communist ideas to all 5 continents, minus Antarctica. That's what it is. So, I don't know, you can read the rest there, but that's what I understand it to be. So now do you get it? They want to conquer the earth. And so let's watch this video. I'm going to play you this, and you're going to be blown away by the one after this. So, you want to know who Donald Trump is? Let's just take a listen.
Cynical and non-ideological. Both of them. I think Vladimir Putin has been watching Donald Trump for so many years, and seeing him some kind of a soulmate, I guess, because both of them share the same perception, same very cynical and non-ideological perception of the modern world. And I will tell you even more from what I'm hearing from Moscow right now. They feel that that's the end of the United States as they used to be. So,
as the leader of the world.
As the stronghold of liberal democracy.
Okay.
And they compare it to the collapse of Soviet Union, because Soviet Union was the state based on ideology, and since the moment people stopped believing.
Don't even say it. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not any of those things. I'm for Jesus Christ.
Living in communism, Soviet Union was doomed to collapse, and finally it collapsed because its leader, Mikhail Gorbachev, was disillusioned with communism and stopped believing in communism and embraced Western ideology, which is liberal democracy. And that's some kind of the same process we're watching right now.
But in reverse.
In reverse. A lot of Americans don't seem to believe in liberal democracy. A lot of Americans publicly claim that actually democracy does not exist. It's something very elitist, something very deep state, Washington. And we see the new American leader who is completely disillusioned, or I don't know if he was illusioned, but he doesn't seem to believe in liberal democracy, and he embraces new type of Russian ideology, which is cynicism. Vladimir Putin is practicing this very pragmatic form of brutal capitalism without human face, without paying attention to human rights or any kind of values. And they think that that's the same approach that is going to be the new ideology of Trump's America.
And I also think you and others have said, I mean, the former Prime Minister of Great Britain, after the debacle that Vance lectured, Vice President Vance, his European allies about embracing essentially what amounts to hate speech and the kind of speech that political parties are not really acceptable in Europe, and embracing parties that are generally not accepted in Germany, for instance. After that debacle, a British Prime Minister said, this signals a dramatic realignment of the United States away from the transatlantic alliance and the democracies and towards Russia. And he said, Putin and Xi of China must be dancing with joy. Do you see that happening? Because the whole narrative has changed in Russia.
I think we even discussed it with you last time we talked, that Putin...
I want to clarify. This was something I wouldn't say before, but it's 99% sure. Not only that, but there's evidence backing up. You can look at the books. There's a book of 27 psychologists who say, they give all the proof in a book, that Trump has NPD. You can literally look up clips of video and piece it together with all the characteristics of someone with NPD. I'm not trying to hit at someone with NPD. That's not my style. It's dangerous. And if you've ever been taken by a narcissist, you understand the danger at hand. So if someone has never experienced being betrayed and whatever by a narcissist, you probably won't get it as much. He idealizes Putin. If Putin all of a sudden did something that made him angry to not idealize, it would go away, and probably for good. He recognizes Putin as a strongman, someone who seems to get victories by whatever way. He doesn't care. The same with Xi, right? President Xi. That's dangerous, man. Three of the same kind.
His plan actually was to have New Yalta. And he has been talking about that.
Let's just explain what Yalta is.
Yeah. Since 2007, when he, for the first time, had his legendary Munich speech at Munich Security Conference, he started calling for the New World Order. And he says that the treaty that was signed, and the treaty about the division of the world that was signed in Yalta in 1945 by Stalin, Roosevelt, and Churchill, it's not relevant. Obviously, it's not relevant after the collapse of Soviet Union. But he wanted, and he asked to set up the New World Order. And he has this vision in his imagination, that picture, him, American president and Chinese leader, sitting together and dividing the world. And probably Donald Trump is the only American president who fits to this picture. We cannot imagine any other person.
Now, I can't call this anything but a theory right now. You would call it a conspiracy theory. But there's quite a few people saying that Trump was as a Russian agent from 1987. for some reason they managed to get through to him. Who knows what his ideals are? And could they hide it? Of course they can. This is Satan we're dealing with. What is, like, do you see that Trump has turned the world on its head? And it's only been like 2.5 or 3 weeks since he's been in. There's shifting alliances like every few hours. And he's done it all. And the people are following him, just like you would see in Nazi Germany or something like that. They sure be nice to hear people speaking out against him. I'm not comparing him to Adolf Hitler. That's not what I'm doing right now. I'm saying it's following the same style.
Person to be there, and I think I know that the proposal to organize, to start thinking about that kind of new Yalta, that proposal was transferred from Vladimir Putin to Donald Trump, and I guess it sounds perfect for Donald Trump. That's a great thought out opportunity.
Have you noticed, you're studying, you're living out essentially in self-imposed exile, and you've been sentenced in absentia for your opposition to the war, right?
8.5 years.
8.5 years, along with other Russian intellectuals who are here, also US citizens. Have you been surprised by what has been termed as like a head-spinning change of narrative in Moscow and on state television and in state media since the debacle in the Oval Office, and since Trump started to use Russian Putin talking points to describe the Ukraine war, and since he appeared to change sides?
That was amazing. For many years, we've been watching anti-American Russian propaganda, and Russia was the leading force in the global anti-Americanism, and Putin saw him.
Surely you see how much propaganda there is out there. And I can tell you, it literally turned on its head. Like, it went up by at least 300 or 400% when the Ukraine war started. It did. I noticed it started then. These are the things that people tend to forget.
Himself as the symbol of that movement, and they switched overnight. And I enjoyed watching Margarita Simonyan, the head of RT, who started praising Donald Trump and explaining to the audience that was completely unprepared that actually he's a very good and decent man. He is not just a petty businessman. No, he's a very noble statesman, and it was amazing. Russian propaganda is praising Donald Trump. We know that the newborn baby in Siberia was called Trump, and his father is Vladimir, so he's Trump Vladimirovich. It's.
So, can you imagine Vladimir Putin? He's a pretty intelligent guy, but he's a killer. He knows that he just has to stay on Trump's good side. So all he has to do is flatter him. You don't think he knows that? That's what keeps you in Trump's grace.
It's something very unusual.
This is the showpiece of this video. Not good. KGB defector. So 1984, warning to America. And guys, this is the antithesis of what I'm trying to get across to you. Watch.
1939 in a suburb of Moscow. He was the son of a high-ranking Soviet Army officer. He was educated in the elite schools inside the Soviet Union and became an expert in Indian culture and Indian languages. He had an outstanding career with Novosti, which was and still is, I should say, the press arm or the press agency of the Soviet Union. It turns out that this is also a front for the KGB. He escaped to the West in 1970 after becoming totally disgusted with the Soviet system, and he did this at great risk to his life. He certainly is one of the world's outstanding experts on the subject of Soviet propaganda and disinformation and active measures. Well, you spoke several times before about ideological subversion. That is a phrase that I'm afraid some Americans don't fully understand. When the Soviets use the phrase ideological subversion, what do they mean by it?
ideological subversion is the slow process which we call either ideological subversion or active measures, активные мероприятия in the language of the KGB, or psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow, and it's divided in 4 basic stages. The first one being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? Because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate one generation of students.
There you go. One generation. That's all it takes to start that cycle. Do you get it? Do you feel demoralized? I watch particular things on the internet. I don't let myself get to the point of like, you know, like I can't like handle this, like, what is the truth? Well, sometimes. But does it look like this is what's happening? They demoralize people? Step 1.
In the country of your enemy, exposed to the ideology of the enemy. You know,
by the internet.
Marxist-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism, American patriotism. The demoralization process in the United States is basically completed already. For the last 25 years. Actually, it's overfulfilled because demoralization now reaches such areas where previously not even Comrade Andropov and all his experts would even dream of such a tremendous success. Most of it is done by Americans to Americans, thanks to lack of moral standards. As I mentioned before, exposure to true information does not matter anymore. A person who was demoralized is unable to assess true information. The facts tell nothing to him. Even if I shower him with information, with
Does that remind you of fact-checking? Do you actually do you expect to go on one of those sites and find the truth? You're better off investigating yourself. How about how, you know, what started, right? How that started, and, you know, there were so many theories, and, you know, you damn well knew how it started. In any case, you know, like they'll say it was here, that's how they'll start it, and there is the truth. Then all of a sudden, they'll say one other thing, and then they'll go, oh, but you know, this also happened. And it starts to become all twisted and stuff. This information, they keep injecting things here and there and cast doubt in other spots.
Authentic proof with documents, with pictures. Even if I take him by force to the Soviet Union and show him concentration camp, he will refuse to believe it until he is going to receive a kick in his fat bottom. When a military boot crashes his balls, then he will understand, but not before that. That's the tragic of the situation of demoralization. The next stage is destabilization. This time, subverter does not care about your ideas and the patterns of your consumption. Whether you eat junk food and get fat and flabby, it doesn't matter anymore. This time, and it takes only from 2 to 5 years to destabilize a nation, what matters is essentials: economy, foreign relations, defense systems. And you can see it quite clearly that in some areas, in such sensitive areas as defense and economy, the influence of Marxist-Leninist ideas in the United States is absolutely fantastic. I could never believe it 14 years ago when I landed in this part of the world that the process will go that fast. The next stage, of course, is crisis. It may take only up to 6 weeks to bring a country to the verge of crisis. You can see it in Central America now. And after crisis, with a violent change of power, structure, and economy, you have so-called the period of normalization. It may last indefinitely. Normalization is a cynical expression borrowed from Soviet propaganda. When the Soviet tanks moved into Czechoslovakia in '68, Comrade Brezhnev said, "Now the situation in brotherly Czechoslovakia is normalized." This is what will happen in the United States if you allow all these schmucks to bring the country to crisis, to promise people all kind of goodies.
I've said in multiple videos, it's the inaction of people. Like, for instance, as I'm like, when it was still the Biden administration, I'm like, you have millions of people coming in at your border, and you can't even get a million of your own citizens to go down and literally shut it down on your own, to force the government's hand. At least I would have thought the southern U.S. would have done that. But, yeah.
And the paradise on earth, to destabilize your economy, to eliminate the principle of free market competition, and to put a big brother government in Washington.
You see all those things disappearing, no competition
benevolent
anymore.
Dictators like Walter Mondale, who will promise lots of things, never mind whether the promises are fulfillable or not. Your leftists in United States, all these professors and all these...
After this, they're shut down all the tens of thousands of small businesses that will never be again. And they gave it all to, who? Biggest wealth transfer ever known. It is a transfer because you could only buy from them.
Beautiful civil rights defenders. They are instrumental in the process of the subversion only to destabilize the nation. When their job is completed, they are not needed anymore. They know too much. Some of them, when they get disillusioned, when they see that Marxist-Leninists come to power, obviously they get offended. They think that they will come to power. That will never happen, of course. They will be lined up against the wall and shot. But they may turn into the most bitter enemies of Marxist-Leninists when they come to power. And that's what happened in Nicaragua. You remember most of these former Marxist-Leninists were either put to prison or one of them split, and now he's working against Sandinistas. It happened in Grenada when Maurice Bishop was already a Marxist. He was executed by a new Marxist who was more Marxist than this Marxist. Same happened in Afghanistan when first there was Taraki, he was killed by Amin, then Amin was killed by Babrak Karmal with the help of KGB. Same happened in Bangladesh when Mujibur Rahman, very pro-Soviet leftist, was assassinated by his own Marxist-Leninist military comrades.
So you see the status, right? You see the status that we're in right now. I had a conversation with someone today, and it's funny that they mentioned it because it's something that I've been thinking about in the last 2 days. It was amazing how he said it because I was able to say this, and he was like, yes. Now, you may not understand this if you're young, but try to understand this. How long have we been on this earth for? There's the 6,000 years thing, but what if it is possible that God had this earth here for a lot longer, right? So who really truly knows? But in all that time, 6,000 years, let's just take the 6,000 years. That's a very long time of period of time. So in that whole, let's just say my arm is that whole 6,000 year period. Here's year 1 going along, year 3,000, right? Only about here at the very end, which is really people. So televisions came in they were starting to make them during the war, I think. But people only started to get them around the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Even maybe in the 80s, every household didn't have one. We were never meant to sit. And I don't mean for good purposes. Like my computer I use as a book because I have all my learning tools on there. Like doing this to share this with you. I mean, like, it's all a brainwashing tool. It's all, so if you just don't remember the time when there was nothing. I do. I'm 46, and I do remember, and it was a better time. I'm better to know God now, and it's a better time because of that, but you get my point though, right? Most people agree that it was a lot better then. People today don't understand that concept. You're not supposed to sit in front of a television and be brainwashed. There's so much propaganda now. TikTok, WhatsApp, YouTube, like, come on, man. Then the movies in Hollywood and wherever else they do, porn. Think about it. Think of the time when there was no internet. There was no TV. People were working on farms. They were working jobs. They didn't have time to be and go into major depressions and all those types of things. Sure, those things still existed, but nowhere near, because people were doing things. People were married. There wasn't a generation of millions upon millions upon millions of people that have no girlfriend or boyfriend, and that everyone weighs 40 pounds overweight. It's bad. It's really, really bad. I'm talking about North America and the West. You get my point, right? Do you think God really wants to let this go on for much longer? So TV's really been with us, let's just say, since the 70s. People have really only all had TV since around that point. That's only 50, let's just say 55 years. That's a drop in the bucket. That's not even a whole lifespan. Think about that. This is what I think happened. I think the Russian Empire reached their goal because they knew that they couldn't defeat the United States on the outside in a war. They just couldn't.